This is the beginning of the biodiversity unit, and this is lesson 1, what's the difference? Before you start the unit, the first thing you'll want to do is take your 2 living materials letters that are inside your kit, pull those out and fax them right away, because you do have, to complete the unit, you do have 2 live materials which you will need to get, and you do need to account for shipping time. So to make sure those are ready when you are in the subsequent lessons, make sure you get those faxed right away. For today's lesson, students are going to start by noticing and observing the similarities and differences in living things. You're going to start not by explaining that to them, but by playing a game. So you're going to have a game where you have a secret person. You're not going to tell them which student it is in the room, and they can only ask you yes and no questions in order to figure out who the secret person is that you've chosen. If they start by asking, is the person a boy or a girl? Remind them that that is not a yes or no question. Ask them how they could rephrase the question so that you can give a yes or no answer, such as, is it a boy? You say no, they know to choose from the girls. You say yes, they know to start asking questions about the different boys. And let them know that they do need to ask a number of questions before they are 100% sure they can narrow it down to one person. You're going to play several rounds of the game, choosing different people. You really want them to work on both their questioning techniques and their observation skills as you play several rounds of the game. Talk about the questions that were the most effective. Which kinds of questions could eliminate a lot of people? Which kinds of questions maybe only eliminated 1 or 2 people and weren't as effective? If they were asking questions that applied to your whole class, like, is the person in 2nd grade? It's a yes or no question, but if your class is made up of all 2nd graders, that doesn't really help move it along. We want them to work on the observations and the questioning. Once they've done that, you're going to move on to another activity where they're going to look at the differences in living things. This is called biodiversity. They're going to start with a game with a number of cards of different looking apples. You can also do this with actual apples if you have those on hand, or you can use the card. In this, each student in the group will take a card of an apple without seeing any of the other cards and without letting anybody else see their card. Once they've done that, everybody will put them in the middle. Then you will turn them over, and students are supposed to be able to identify the apple that they took. If everybody did a good job with observations, each student should be able to identify their own apple. If not, you may have 2 or 3 students who think that one card belonged to all 3 of them. This is fine. This is how we're practicing looking at things that will help them better identify the differences between very similar items. It may be that the color was a little different, the shape was a little different. Some have stems, some don't. We want them to spend some time really observing the differences in things that at first glance may look similar. Once they've had a chance to practice with that, we're going to play a very similar game using seashells instead of using apples. You will start by distributing seashells to groups, 1 per student. So if you've got 5 students in a group, you would have just 5 seashells. So each student would take one, to look at it, make their observations, and then ask the students if they're really sure they would be able to identify that same seashell in a group. Once they feel like they would, have everybody put their seashells back on a plate, and now increase the size of the group. So if you have 5 students, put 5 more seashells on there. So now there's 10 seashells. Have them mix them around a little bit so they can't just remember the location of their seashell, and then see if they can still observe and tell which seashell was theirs. We want them to notice that similar objects can have a lot of similarities and sometimes subtle differences that we need to be able to observe in order to tell them apart.